I could have listened to that all
hello
afternoon.
again, Stuart, and hello to anybody everybody. Like I say, it might sound desperate, doesn't it? Anybody is listening. To everybody who's listening in. And today's topic is to do or not to do. That's me trying to be a bit Shakespearean, but it's all on the topic of risk, which has become very, very, well, it's hit the headlines a lot of late. But I'll very briefly explain where it came from, because it's only part of it though. I was watching a super duper documentary recently, all about searching for disease X, and part of this was some simulation of pandemics and spreads, which was quite interesting. So this guy had a simulation because H5N1 apparently is centered in, I think it's something like Denver in the Colorado or something. They put the center of the epidemic spread there, and they said, well, this is what happens if you've got, they programmed in the same details for all the scenarios about how it would spread. But what they did was they put in the fatality factor was different. So with a fatality factor of 50%, i.e. 50% of all the people catching H5N1, after several months, it hadn't spread outside the local area, and there'd been 1,300 deaths and 3,000 total infections. If, however, you put the fatality level at 3%, and you let it run from a little bit longer, at the end of a year, you've infected, I think, something like 1.5 billion people, and you've killed 140 million. And the difference is, if you have a risk, 3% chance of death, 50% chance of death, what happens is people with a 50% chance, they're more compliant. They wash their hands. They wear masks. They stay away from other people. They take precautionary actions. 3% chance of death, people say, nah, it's never going to happen to me, and it does, and it spreads. And I thought, well, that surely in some way applies to risk in general. There's a reward element, which is why we do something. I thought, if it doesn't seem as though it's going to affect us or be fatal, if it does, we won't bother doing it. And that's exactly what happens in our businesses.
And it's a really good story, and I could talk for many hours about some of the issues associated with viruses and their transmissibility and other things which are still dear to my heart, following my previous career when I did all of this stuff. But the lesson that I think you've highlighted is we are more prepared to sort of push the boundaries of our risk tolerance if we think the impact to us personally or to our business is potentially low. It's only, unfortunately, when that suddenly becomes a reality, when the risk suddenly becomes real, that we actually then take action. And I can remember running large scale transformations with one business when I'd gone in and it'd been bought, and I had to sort of make a change to the business. And I can remember we had lots of discussions about, should we do this because it diverts funds away from other things that we want to do. We've all got, whether even you, Elon Musk, you still have limited amounts of time, money, or resources in some respect. You have to make choices. And the choices were always towards, can we get away without doing this? Can we find a way of not doing this, delaying it? And often delaying it means never doing it at all. I was having a discussion with somebody who has a cybersecurity business recently, and we were talking about sort of what are the decisions being taken in many boardrooms. JLR, Marks and Spencer's, a number of businesses, Co-op, have been hit very hard recently and have found the consequences. There are a number of others that, as he could say, I can't tell you just how many are currently being hit and are not talking about it because they're embarrassed. But the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of businesses who are currently suffering and made the decision exactly as you just described, Derek. It probably won't happen to me. Or indeed, the other thing was, even if it does happen to me, I suspect we'll get away without it being too much. We'll get away with it. And so they've chosen to make their investments instead of protecting their business, instead of training, instead of making sure their security is tight. They've chosen to do other things with their investments. And those are the decisions we have to take as business leaders on a daily basis. We choose to avoid those because sometimes we don't believe it will happen to us because we see the positives. But we're also saying to ourselves, I bet I'll be the one that gets away with it. And a lot of us are not now getting away with it. I'm very concerned that some businesses don't recognize the risks they're taking with their cybersecurity because they think they're too small. Once again, going back to the conversation I had with Tony, a lot of the time, a business is saying they're too small to look for me. That's not the point. What these hackers tend to do is they just look for everybody who's got a weak point into the systems.
Yeah, they do.
Once they're inside, they work out if you're big and if you can afford more or less in order to be sort of rescued from the predicament you've allowed them to put that you have allowed them to put you in.
I know, looking at the stats on my own website 2 years ago, it's not attacks on my website, although it has been attacked, is the number of attacks that are monitored by the security software, and it worldwide it's more than doubled in a year. It's very big business, and
it is. And they're not looking for big businesses and saying we'll target them. Some of the time, that is exactly what happens to some of the bigger operations. But a lot of the time, they're just going and hitting everybody in the way that spam works. They're just going out and trying to hit every damned website. And once they find one that lets them in, they then probe around and try and work out how big you are. And so nobody can take the risk of just leaving this stuff and saying we're too small, it won't bother us. It will bother you, but what you'll find is that the charge that you'll be levied by the hacker to get yourself out of the situation might be smaller because they'll realize you're not worth as much, but you'll still be hit.
It does also leave in this particular case, it leaves the door open for some clever person who works in cybersecurity to almost develop a new cybersecurity as a service type of thing, because the small businesses, people like us, we buy sort of off the shelf solutions. It's in a box, you configure it, and you let it run, and for most of the time it works. If you're a really big business, then you've probably got a company working on your behalf, and well, not if you're Jaguar Land Rover, but they do all. but they do all the probing. They do all the real probing of your system to see if there are any weak points in it, and whatever. But it's that middle ground. It's the medium-sized enterprises that are probably most at risk, I would think. But that's just one side of the risk. The other side is the reward side. What stops us or encourages us to take risks when there's a pot of gold at the end of it? I mean, the same board members who wouldn't spend money on cybersecurity solutions, if you gave them a sniff of them being able to double their money, they'd be throwing their wallets at you. So
yeah, and this is the great mystery to me, which is the adrenaline rush that you get when you take that risk and you get away with it. I'm not sure what happens when you don't get away with it. I think the adrenaline goes away very, very quickly. But a lot of people enjoy that rush, don't they? They take a risky decision, get away with it, and they think, loved the rush, got to do that again.
You mean as
one day
if you
it will not pay off.
PPE to the government?
Let's. But
the
thing is,
company names,
not mentioning anybody, not mentioning any people in particular. But the fact of the matter is, there is that adrenaline rush, isn't it? When you take a decision, even in business, and you get away with it, and you realize that you've managed to sort of, avoid that huge potential problem that was out there, you think to yourself, that's worth doing again because I got away with it. I'm one of those people. I don't know if you've noticed, Derek, but I have found as I have got slightly older, my appetite to risk has dropped because I've started to realize I won't get away with it. I've got away with it up until now. I've got away with driving in a silly way. I've got away with doing silly things. And eventually you start to think to yourself, I've done this quite a lot of times and it's beginning to feel as though the next one will be the last one. So I think you begin to evaluate this as perhaps you start to take more and more risks, but you eventually start to realize that you can't keep getting away with it. I'm not sure if that's what you found. It's certainly what I've been finding.
Yeah, well, individuals start looking at pretty mundane things like pensions, don't you? You become risk averse, and that sort of thing.
Don't start mentioning pensions on a nice day like this. Let's not bring that up.
But yeah, I thought your risk profile changes as all the the financial advisors. I mean, okay, businesses are a bit more than financial advice, but all the financial advisors who say, oh, "What's your risk profile? Do you want to?" They realise that everybody's risk profiles are different. Now, when you have a boardroom full of people, how
then you've got a bunch of risks, haven't you?
Yeah, you've got a risk of risk, I think. So yeah, but it's the sort of investment decisions and things like that. The things that are the good things that why don't we do all those? What's stopping people investing and
once again,
doing all the innovation stuff?
But once again, Derek, that comes at it. You've got the choice, haven't you? Your sales director is screaming at you. I need another 2 salesmen in order to sell because you've got targets you've got to hit. Then you've got your product specialists, your marketing department saying we need the same investment in order to put into some market survey or to start thinking about your next product. Which one are you going to pick? You're going to pick the let's get out there and sell. You've only got so much money. We spend money very I was going to say unwisely. That's probably unfair. We spend money in order to try and improve the way in which our companies work. One of the things I do, and I think we may have talked about this before, I help run this thing called the Sustainability World Cup. And the Sustainability World Cup is a game simulation where we take younger people, young professionals, where we take business students, etc., and we actually ask them for 6 weeks to run a business to make it sustainable through both their ERP, but also that's environmental. No, ERP is the other one, isn't it? Through environmental, social responsibility.
ESG is the word.
ESG, sorry. ERP is ESG, ERP. ERP is another acronym. That's something else I've been talking about to some of this morning. But we try and teach them the sort of how to run your business through ESG principles, the 9 principles of sustainability. But also you've got to try and build it as a business that will sustain, and it is astounding the number of times these people make decisions, and they're making decisions not based upon data, which you can clearly see in the data. This is the right thing to do, but no, they make it on a gut feel. They sit there and they try to make a decision to do or not to do. They sit there and they do it from what they think is the right thing to do. I'm sorry to have to go back to this one again, but as we've taught in the SWC, as I've seen so many times in the business, the data will guide you. The data will tell you the truth, but we often ignore the data because we want to feel good about the decisions we've taken based upon our headspace. Now, I've heard that from a world leader not long ago who said, as far as he was concerned, something was a good decision because that's what he feels. Well, I'm sorry to have to say, I'm much more interested in people that can actually prove it to me through data rather than I've decided to make a decision, risky or not, because it feels like the right thing to do. Let's have some sensible decision making based upon data, but also on the risks that you're taking, because you're taking a risk every time you do it.
Now, the other thing that I've noticed, because as you know, I'm in doing these assessments for the King's Innovation Awards. But one of the things we do is sort of look at how these things are financed. Now, if you've got a small startup company, they're still being financed with, Series A, Series B funding. They're going to people to get large amounts of money and starting up companies. But a lot of the other companies are actually effectively funding whatever they do through retained profits.
Mm-hmm.
They're not borrowing money, raising money, or anything else. They're just doing that through retained profits, which is limiting what they can actually do. And I found that distinction quite surprising. So small companies with two people are like spending 20-30 million pounds, and companies with hundreds of millions of turnover can barely spend a couple of £100,000.
Yeah.
Which again is surprising. So that is incredibly risk averse.
And are they making those decisions? Are they making these decisions based upon risk profiles or things where they've actually taken time to evaluate risks? Or once again, are these being driven by gut feels? They're just sort of going in whatever direction they think they can in order to make progress.
The cynical side of me says the money's being given to shareholders as dividends if they're making money.
Yeah.
And those are the same shareholders that you alluded to that probably don't know about all the risks that are being taken.
And so long as you get away with it, shareholders are happy. As soon as they learn that you've been making unwise decisions, they come down on you with some angry pitchforks and start making angry noises. But what you don't have is the opportunity to tell them is, well, I made those decisions because I was trying to keep you happy last year, rather than what I should have been doing, which is make you a little bit unhappy and then make a sensible decision this year to keep my business alive. That is not a discussion we're having, and it should be a discussion that to do or not to do, you choose to do.
Yeah, indeed. And I would have thought there will be some shareholders who will be more happy at having
I agree.
Having a long-term income from dividends rather than having a very short-term income from dividends.
I'm afraid I have to agree with you.
Unless, of course, you're a shareholder in a water company, and the company's never going to go bust because it can't.
You do pick them, Derek. You really do pick them, don't you?
I do. I have this knack. So, indeed. So, we're getting on towards that time, aren't we?
So, have we come to a conclusion, or have we just come to the end of the first set of questions? To do or not to do appears to be a big problem that people are choosing not to do, often for the wrong to do reasons.
Yes, yeah. I would really love to have a in-depth conversation with somebody that's been involved in with the Jaguar Land Rover or the Co-op or whatever, and find out why these things weren't done. But as I said, well, with a little bit of insight into something, I can't say where it came from, but you've got the big cybersecurity solutions, you've got the little cybersecurity solutions, and not much in the middle.
No,
if somebody could offer a tailored solution, i.e., you don't have to pay for all this, you can pay for this bit and this bit and this bit, and do it in a cost-effective way, I think there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, great.
So if you're listening to this and you want to do that, just cut us in and
just give us a call. Give us a call.
Yeah, who'd you call? Not Ghostbusters, us.
No, absolutely not. No, you don't want Ghostbusters around. They'll bring in a whole bunch of shareholders you don't need.
Yeah, I think so. That's where we are. I think we've just answered the first set of questions. There's a whole lot of broad psychology. That'd be
Well, that would
fantastic,
be the
wouldn't it?
next thing to sort of
Yeah,
try and
broad.
understand exactly
The
where the
psych-
brain is. I mean, just once again, to sort of, to bring this back to biology, I think there's some great animal behavior. This will make you feel sorry for a cockroach. There is a wasp that's able to sort of inject a cockroach with a chemical, which makes it very, very compliant. It normally scuttles away, but after being injected with this, now at the same time it's being injected with this rather unpleasant chemical, it's also being injected with eggs that the wasp is laying, and the wasp larvae eat their way out of the cockroach once it's had this in. But it just goes to show that unfortunately brains, we have similar neurons to what a cockroach has. Things can be altered by our brain chemistry, and I do think that there are an awful lot of issues associated with the chemistry and things going on in brains of leaders where they are more prone to take risks than they are to try and sit down and make sensible decisions. And I think that's something that human beings have a great deal more chance to change than maybe a cockroach. But either which way, if we were to try and look at this as a problem that we should resolve, please stop going by your gut feel. Start looking at the data and look at the risks that you take, because they become much more obvious if you see just how many people around you, like with the example that we started with the flu that we started this story with. If you look at the risks around you, you would make many more decisions to try and protect yourself and your business if you actually looked properly. I'm going to say no more, Derek. I think I've probably had enough to say today.
Never. I could listen to you all day, Stuart, but I'm not going to.
You'd be one of a very few.
Indeed. So there we go. So that's a collective decision making. Could be another interesting topic for another time.
Oh, shall we do that one?
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll be back if we're following the same. If we're back to our normal routine, it'll be Friday, the 14th of November.
That seems like a good day.
It seems like a good day, and then Friday, the 12th of December. Ho ho ho. So there we go. So that's it for now. Folks who are listening, hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll be back next month. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Yeah, it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.
Goodbye.